on my side. There we go. Got a couple in there now.
Question really quick. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. Is there any black boxes on my screen?
No.
Okay, perfect. Welcome everyone. We're just letting everyone join. We have quite a few people signed up for tonight. We've just opened the webinar up, so give it a few minutes before we get started. If you're joining, at the bottom of your screen, there should be on your control panel a globe. If you could choose the English or Spanish channel, your preference of how you want to listen in tonight. We have interpretive services in place. Good evening, everyone. We're just going to give it a few more minutes. We have interpretation in place tonight. So on your control panel, where you would see your video camera or you mute or unmute, there should be a globe. And if you click on that globe, you should be able to check, click on an English or Spanish channel to listen to the interpretation in the language of your choice tonight. Thank you. Well, Alisha, I think I'm gonna go ahead and start right now.
Okay.
We've given it 5 minutes and it doesn't look like we have a whole lot of people coming in right now. So I'll let them in as they come in. My name is Jenny Cavano and I'm the Program Director for Central Oregon Disability Support Network. And we are welcoming today Alisha Langford, who's gonna talk to us in detail about government benefits. Central Oregon Disability Support Network is a family network based out of Central and Eastern Oregon, and we provide supports, education, advocacy, and trainings for families that are raising a child that experiences disability. And give me just 1 second. So the work that I do is passion work for me and for all of the people that work at Central Oregon Disability Support Network and our family and advocacy support network in Klamath Falls and Kansuki Family Network in Harney County. The work that I do is in direct relation to the fact that I have raised my eldest son, Christian, who's now 25, and who also has used a lot of the benefits that Alisha is going to talk about tonight. I have a couple of housekeeping instructions. If you've just joined us, please go ahead and look at the control panel on the bottom of your computer screen, and you will see that we have it looks like a globe, and if you click on that, you can choose an English or Spanish channel, depending on how you would like to listen to this evening's training. We're going to be recording this training, and so we will be posting it on our website, and you'll get a copy of the link to that recording in a couple of days when we put it up, so that you can go back and listen to it and at your leisure. Everyone is muted tonight because we are in a webinar platform. We will be taking questions in the chat, and I will do my best to help Alisha as we go through this evening, address those if it's timely, or we will leave them to the end. Also, just one thing at the end of the webinar tonight, we would love for you to hop onto our SurveyMonkey link and give us some feedback about this evening, and you'll be entered in a drawing for a $25 gift card. So Alisha, take it away. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yes, my name is Alisha Langford, and I am a special needs planner at the Abeona Group. And I, similar to Jenny, I come to my role as a special needs planner, as a place of passion. I have a 21-year-old daughter, Ashlyn, who experiences quadriplegic cerebral palsy diagnosis. And so I know personally the impact that these benefit programs have had on our family, in addition to what that looks like in the scheme of, not just planning for our kids now, but, the longer term piece of, as they mature into adulthood and as they, age and maybe mom and dad are no longer here. So helping create a support system for them to live, the most independent life as possible and be well supported. My assistant Haley also has a daughter with cerebral palsy. So, again, we come from that space of being parents first, I would say, and then, professionals second. So I, thank you, Jenny, for having me tonight. And I'll just jump into it because we do have a lot of data information to cover. So I want to make sure we have plenty of time. As Jenny mentioned, we will, try to take questions at the end of the presentation. Or in the middle if we have time. And then I do always say, if you have a really, really specific personal question, feel free to email us, and, we can answer those questions. Those are usually not, best suited for webinar type space. So we'll do our best though to get through as many questions as possible. So I'm just going to jump right into it. Important disclosure. We are going to talk about government benefits, and we're going to talk about, things like special needs trust just a little tiny bit, because those come into play when we're talking about this. And so, we are financial advisors. That's what our licensing falls under. We're not attorneys. We're not CPAs. So, that's our disclosure, letting everyone know that. Let's see. So first, we're going to talk about county intellectual and developmental disability services and Kplan. So one of the things that, I think as families get diagnoses, the first questions that come up is like, okay, well, what supports are out there for our kiddos? And, in the school system, there are things like IEPs and, some specialized education, things like that. And so your county services is the space that gives you support in community. So you'll hear this referred to as, like I said, county DD services or developmental disability services. So the first thing we'll talk about is eligibility. And, so the first and foremost, you have to have a medical diagnosis. And even though that sounds silly, the reason I say that is because some individuals will get a educational diagnosis where you will have a school say this child is on their IEP based on an autism diagnosis. Well, to get government benefit type services and county benefits, you have to have a medical diagnosis. So that's really important to know before you apply. In addition to that, they have to have an intellectual or developmental disability to qualify for those services. So if you have a child who maybe only has a diagnosis of ADHD or anxiety, something like that, Those are normally not, when they stand alone, those are not diagnoses that qualify for this specific benefit program. In addition to another diagnosis, because a lot of kids, as we know, have multiple diagnoses underneath their umbrella. You know, that's different. But if it's just singular with a, you know, mental disorder, personality disorder, substance abuse, learning disability, those aren't necessarily, you know, considered intellectual or developmental disability service eligible. So the impairments really have to affect their adaptive behaviors, which adaptive behaviors are, you know, your activities of daily living. So the things that you do on a daily basis, like walking, talking, getting yourself dressed, being able to, you know, to manage, you know, your day in a sense of getting from one place to the next, depending on the age of the child. And that's really how the assessments are looked at, is, you know, based on age. Are they, you know, on track, or are they, you know, behind development standards? So the thing that's important to know about County Developmental Disability Services is that it's not income-based. And that would be one of the large misconceptions that I come across with a lot of the families we work with, is they'll say, you know, we don't qualify for anything because we make too much money. And that's not true for developmental disability services, for the case management there. So just understanding, you know, that it's not income-based or asset-based to qualify. You just have to, the child just has to have the medical diagnosis that falls under intellectual or developmental disability. So what is the difference between intellectual and developmental disability? The main difference is when the disability determination, when it manifests, so when it starts. So essentially, to have an intellectual disability eligibility, it has to have started prior to age 18. Where with a developmental disability, it can go all the way up to age 22 before it's determined or diagnosed, because there are a lot of kids that might not get, you know, diagnosed till they're a little bit older. With both of those qualifications, the disability is expected to last indefinitely. So it's, you know, their diagnosis is something that isn't going to go away in a year, but it's going to last, you know, indefinitely. Another large difference between these two different qualifications is for intellectual disability, they have to have an IQ of 75 or below. Where with developmental disability, IQ is not a factor. So what happens is, you know, if you think back several years ago, I know there was, they had a really hard time getting kids that were on the autism spectrum approved for these services. And they made some changes in the way that they address that, because there's a lot of children who are on the spectrum that may have incredibly high IQs, but they, when it comes to their adaptive skills, those activities of daily living, they're not able to do a lot of things, you know, without a large amount of support. So, you know, having an eligibility where IQ isn't a factor, or where they can look at the adaptive assessment, you know, if the IQ is in that mid-range of 66 to 75, then that helps more children get services, essentially. So, and really the only other, you know, differing factor is in developmental disability, you know, the diagnosis or the disability itself originates in the brain and directly impacts the brain. So, you know, like for my daughter, she has cerebral palsy, that's going to fall under the developmental disability side, because her, you know, she has a brain injury. So again, it has to manifest before 22. With developmental disability, intellectual has to manifest before age 18. So what is the process to get, you know, to receive either intellectual disability or developmental disability services? So the first thing is you have to apply. There's no cost to apply. You get an application either online or by calling your county developmental disability, you know, service office and, you know, requesting an application. Some counties have them where you can do it right online. Others you have to, they'll mail you a packet and you have to fill out all the information, then you have to mail it back or take it in, one of the two. The other part of the process is that the person that you're applying for must be a U.S. citizen. So the child must be a U.S. citizen that you're applying for services for, or a qualified non-citizen. And so we just, recommend that you speak to the intake specialist to have them help you, walk you through what a qualified non-citizen is as far as their criteria. It was kind of too much information to put on the slide. So just call your county and ask to speak to the intake specialist, and if your child's not a U.S. citizen, and find out, kind of more specific details on your situation versus, what they consider qualified. Why apply? So again, I think sometimes, folks are like, well, I don't know if I need those services or why I would have to have them. And, somebody told, like they hear other things like, well, my friend doesn't get very many things from Developmental Disability Services. But I'll share with you my own personal story is, my daughter she was approved for services when she was, fairly young. We didn't get a ton of support. We'd get, annual case management, and I think they gave us something silly like, $100 a year for community inclusion. They'd pay for some, specialized swim lessons or something like that. But other than that, they just checked in with us, and there wasn't a lot. We got a little bit of respite, maybe 20 hours a month, I think, something like that. But what happened is that when Kplan came into effect, when the Affordable Care Act began, and Oregon bought into the Medicaid expansion program, then we were already in the DD services system, so we got to apply for Kplan immediately. We were one of the first families, I think, on Kplan, where the process really is to access Kplan, which is the next thing we'll talk about, is you have to qualify for Developmental Disability Services first, and then you can apply for Kplan. So, I would just say that the reasons to apply, even if you don't want to access Kplan, but the reasons to apply and just be under that umbrella are that, there could be changes to eligibility, new services become available. And I think there has been some, through COVID, there's been some additional services that DD Services has reached out and, helped some families with. Or if your situation changes in the future and maybe your child needs additional support, in a few years that they didn't need, they don't need now. So it's just the ability to be, in the system, so that if either a program changes or your situation changes, that you don't have to, really start from scratch. You can, just jump into some of those, those supports. Jenny, you got a question? Oh, you're muted. I can't hear you.
Sorry, I forgot to launch the poll. I was wondering if you wanted to do that. Can you hear me?
It looks like Jenny's frozen for a minute, so I'm going to.
Can you hear me, Alisha? Hi, folks. I don't know if you can hear me or not. It looks like we lost Alicia's screen sharing.
Yep, I'm back.
Okay.
I got kicked out for some reason. Let me go back to this screen share. Okay.
So Alisha, what I was asking was, did you want me to launch the poll? I forgot to do it earlier. Sorry.
Oh yeah, thank you. That would be great. Let's do that real quick. I'll kind of work through this slide while everyone's answering those questions. Or do you want me to wait?
No, I'm gonna go ahead and launch it right now.
Okay. Great. So while you guys are answering the poll questions really quickly, we'll talk about eligibility determination. So like I mentioned, step one, fill out an application. Step two, they'll do an adaptive assessment, and that's through DD Services, or you can use your own provider at your own cost, but it's really important to check in with DD Services first with the, eligibility intake specialist to make sure that you're having the specific requirements for the adaptive assessment, that they're being addressed in whatever private assessment you're having done. But again, not necessary to pay for that out of your pocket. DD Services will, take care of that for you. Again, onset needs to be prior to age 22. And, the timeline of what to expect. And I would say, again, these are the rules, but, with COVID, things have gotten, I would say, pushed out a little bit just due to, lack of ability to, for people to meet in person and things like that. But the timeline to be expected is supposed to be 90 days from when your application and releases of information are received. They have 90 days to determine eligibility. So they receive your application, release of information, they may be requesting some records from your doctor or your school or something like that. And you technically are supposed to have a determination within 90 days. I will say that extensions have been being made. I do not think that they've fully recovered since, the pandemic began. So patience is definitely required right now. So you'll receive a determination letter. And so if you don't hear something in 90 days, it's just a good place to flag your calendar and check in. Make sure that they got the application, make sure something didn't get, lost in the mail or whatever the situation is. And, so again, kindly check in and say, did you, 90 days is here and we haven't heard anything. What's the status of my, application?
Okay, so I'm ending the poll.
Okay.
And I'm going to share the results, so you should be able to see them.
Okay, great. So it looks like we mostly have parents. We have a few grandparents on today and a few professionals. Awesome. Average ages are probably 6 to 15, a few older kids. Awesome, great. Well, thank you for everyone that completed that. That's helpful. I like to know who I'm speaking to. So yeah, so again, follow up in 90 days if you haven't heard anything about your application or your assessment. And then, see, did we skip one? Nope, there we go. And then, what are the services that you get? So in Oregon, because, every state has a little bit different services and different, they call their programs different things. So in Oregon, you get Medicaid, which is Oregon Health Plan. So it's basic healthcare coverage that covers, doctor, hospital, and prescription care, costs. And then we get Kplan, which is also known as the Community First Choice Waiver. So federally, it's called the Community First Choice Waiver. And then Oregon calls theirs Kplan. And so don't be confused if somebody, if you move to a different state and they're like, we've never heard of Kplan, we don't know what you're talking about. Washington calls their waiver the IFS waiver. It's different. Every state has a different name for their Community First Choice, waiver program. So what the purpose of Kplan is for is to provide personal in-home care and in community settings. So the idea is that, again, if you flash back 30 years, even as early as that, and then definitely longer, if an individual had experienced disability, had a diagnosis of, any kind of disability, a lot of times they lived in group homes or group facilities. They didn't live in community with their parents or with their family. And that's the purpose of this waiver, is they've pulled funds from, essentially that used to go to institutions that, arguably were maybe not taking the best care of folks and providing them the best opportunities, and brought those in community to have them, be living, in a community setting of their choosing. And, the level of care for that individual, the definition really is that without those services, they would require, in-hospital care, like a nursing facility or an institution, type care. So, again, if there's an example of, like my daughter, she's got her epilepsy, ebbs and flows of being very severe or not. And so she can't really be home alone. And, in addition to her cerebral palsy, she needs some supports there. So, if the choice was, her having someone there at the house taking care of her this evening, or, her being you know, in some kind of a group home type situation or institution. That's not what we would want. We want her at home, which is what she's doing. So, again, so these waivers are, you know, the home and community-based waivers are Medicaid waivers. So where I said DD services is not subject to income and assets, Kplan.
Sorry, folks, we've lost Alisha again. I'm not quite sure what's going on. Hang in there for a sec. Yeah, it's kicked her out again. Sorry, Alisha, I'm not quite sure what's going on.
I'm not sure either. It's okay. I might not be in, let me see if I'm in that. I don't know if that setting is on here still for me to be in the English one. Let me unshare for 1 second. Can you hear me okay, Jenny?
I can.
Okay.
Joy, would you mind just giving me a thumbs up in the chat if you're hearing Alisha in the. Bear with us, folks, sorry. Yep, we're all good. Go back.
Okay, good. Awesome. Oh, is my screen is first. Okay, great. So again, with the waivers, they can have different income and asset rules. So like I said, DD services itself does not have an income or asset limit. But when we look at Kplan, unlike other programs, unlike SSI or, you know, some of those other programs, Kplan only looks at the child's income and assets. Most children don't have income for the most part. There are some things we'll talk about in a second that are considered income to a child, but you know, the family's income and assets are excluded for Kplan, and they're only looking at what is, you know, under the child as if they were a household of one. So some things that do count as income are living trusts that the child may be a beneficiary of today, where there's being money distributed out of a trust that is not a special needs trust. So I'm going to be very clear, like special needs trusts, those are okay. Other types of living family trusts where there are funds being pushed out that you know, are revocable, that are not special needs trusts, you know, that can be considered under an income to the child or an asset to the child, depending on, you know, how that's being handled. Checking accounts, savings accounts, UTMA accounts, brokerage accounts, investment accounts. So again, I've seen, you know, grandparents bought their grandson Disney stocks and when they were born or whatever, and they've grown and, you know, they've exceeded the asset limit. Savings bonds, that's another one that's come up where, again, grandma was buying savings bonds for a kiddo like every single month, and they piled up, and there was several thousands of dollars in savings bonds, and that those type of situations they will look at as an asset. Ownership in business, I might sound crazy, but I've seen it where a child has you know, a portion of ownership in a business that then they're counting that as an asset against them. You know, along with a few other, you know, more one-off type things, but just generally, those are some examples of what would be considered an asset. And really what the asset limit is $2,000. So the child has to be under $2,000 in assets in order to qualify, you know, under the asset limit for the Kplan Medicaid waiver. So what does Kplan provide? Kplan provides personal support workers, or you will hear the acronym PSW for short. And those folks, those PSWs, are supposed to be providing support with those activities of daily living. You know, help, again, like helping dressing, helping bathing, helping with, you know, in community. So for kids that are older, maybe it's helping them go purchase their groceries, you know, and meal prep and cook meals and, you know, things like that. Again, those activities to help them become a little more independent as they get older. Relief or respite care. So again, for kids who are younger, maybe mom and dad need a break and they need, you know, some time away. And so they can get respite care through Kplan. And then attendant care, which again, that's kind of the bathing and those types of things. Jenny, do you have a question?
Yeah, so we have a question in the chat. Did you say irrevocable trust are not considered a living trust?
No, so no. So so trusts that are revocable, those are trusts that are counted. Irrevocable trusts, which are usually special needs trusts, are irrevocable. Those they do not count. So if you have if I have a Alisha Langford family trust and Ashlyn, my daughter, is a beneficiary, and you know we're paying for things out of that trust for her, or you know essentially, again, not a special needs trust, but just a plain revocable family trust, that money is actively being pushed out to the child or the family, that can be considered, you know, income. And so those are situations where we have to have, you know, portions of trusts, you know, changed, or, you know, definitely consult with an estate planning attorney to get those modified to have it not count as an asset. So special needs trusts have very specific language that government programs look at and say, we are not going to count that as an asset for the child. So again, special needs trusts, irrevocable, are irrevocable, and those do not count as an asset towards the child. I'm going to move on. If there's another question, Jenny, you can jump in. So behavioral consultation. So that is, you know, support with behaviors. Kplan sometimes will pay for ABA therapy. Home modifications, so up to $5,000 a calendar year, and home modifications for the individual, again, is to keep them in community. So, you know, the wheelchair ramps, the special, you know, things, doorknobs if they need to get in and out for fire safety, just, you know, different things to make them more independent in the home or safe. So skills training, so that can be, you know, some employment support or teaching them how to, you know, do different, you know, excuse me, skills training is more like the cooking and like household chores, things like that. Assistive technology, so up to $5,000 a year in assistive technology. That can be, you know, everything from apps for an iPad to, you know, really just it kind of depends on what your therapists are recommending and you know, applying to have Kplan pay for those things. For service, community inclusion, so that's, you know, getting someone out in community, taking them to an activity, taking them to a concert, to a park, like whatever it is that the individual would like to do, you know, getting them out in community, that's the point of the waiver. Employment support, so Medicaid pays for vocational rehabilitation, so job coaching, job carving, you know, job discovery, things like that to, you know, again, support the individual in becoming employed. And then for folks that need, you know, more support, there are adult foster homes, or even for kids that need that, you know, or group home support. So Medicaid pays for those waivers, you know, so that all follows under that community first choice waiver for what services are provided. That does not mean you have to be in a group home or foster home. That's just, again, some kids need that level of care. So how do you obtain Kplan services? We talked about DD services. I called the Developmental Disability Services the gatekeeper to, you know, in a sense, to Kplan. So you got to qualify for DD services first. So become eligible for that, apply and become eligible for DD services. And you have to become eligible in the county of your residence. So whatever county you live in, that's who's going to do that for you. Then next, they look at you know, you request to have Kplan services, and the disabled person, you know, must qualify for Medicaid as a household of one. Essentially, is again, that's what they look at them like, is okay, we're going to exclude mom and dad's income and assets, household of one. Do they qualify for Medicaid on that basis? And if they do, you know, based on, and these information changes every year. Actually, we need to update these for 2021, so my apologies. But You know, a single adult that is, you know, $17,000 in income a year. The waiver can be available, you know, to increase income to 300% of the federal poverty level, which is $38,280 for a single adult in 2020. I actually don't believe that they raised those for 2021, but we can double check. So they become eligible basically on that income space. So you've got the income qualification, and then you've got assets over here. So income is based on the federal poverty line level, you know, with the increases to 300%. And then assets are based on just the value of, you know, of assets that might be in the child's name. Then they complete the Oregon Needs Assessment, or you'll hear the acronym, they'll call it ONA, you know, ONA, but people say ONA. That is to be completed within 45 days of the eligibility determination. And so when the assessor completes the ONA, you want to plan for a decent amount of time. So what that process really is they are going to ask you, you know, they're really going to dig deep into what's, you know, supports your child actually needs. So everything, they'll talk about behaviors, they'll talk about, you know, hygiene, bathing, cooking, you know, sleeping, medication. I mean, really every single thing about every minute that your child needs support during the day, that's the questions that you're going to answer in that assessment. And then what basically the result of that is then they put all the data in, and then it spits out a number that says this individual gets this number of hours of support. That number is different for literally, I think, every single child. Because again, it's based on their need, not on, like, you know, everyone that's 12 doesn't get a certain amount of hours. It's the need of the individual, what they need in daily support. So the ONA, like I said, assigns those hours. And then from there, they create an individual service plan. And that's exactly what it sounds like. They write a plan, almost like your IEP, if your child has an IEP, but it's focused on, you know, on the more life skills. It's not education based. It is focused on, you know, it's person-centered, and it reflects the individual's goals. And so if it's about, you know, whatever it is, it can be the employment piece. It can just be they're, you know, learning to dress themselves, or they need support with, like I said, like the showering, you know, different things like that. So you write those goals in, and then that is a guide to the personal support workers to know, you know, what areas of support this person needs, you know, as they're working with them. So important roles to understand the names of. So personal support worker, that person, you can, you know, to essentially you get to hire personal support workers of your choosing. It's you know, not necessarily like the state doesn't just send in a bunch of random strangers to your house and you are stuck with who they give you. You have the option to hire, to privately hire, you know, personally pick, I should say, people that you want as personal support workers. The criteria for that is the individual that's, you know, providing the support has to be over age 18. They have to be able to pass a criminal background check. You know, they work with the individual to support their goals. The current rate for just the standard rate for DD services paid through the county and the state is $15.77 per hour. And then the overnight respite, so there's these 24-hour blocks where when parents need a, you know, a 24-hour, like a respite night, the caregiver can stay with the person for 24 hours, and it's a flat rate of $212 for the 24-hour period. You know, and I know if you take 1577 times 24, it comes out to more than 212, but the, you know, the thought is that that person is going to be sleeping at some point, so they don't pay them the full rate when they're sleeping. So that's an important role. So PSW or DSP. So if your child is in the children in home intensive services, they call their, you know, a lot of providers direct support personnel, or DSPs. So those are interchangeable acronyms. So personal support worker, and then there's employer of record. So the employer of record is the person who, you know, you've got these PSWs and they're, you know, working in with your child in your home or in community, and then they complete a time card and someone has to sign that and say, yes, this person, you know, verify, yes, this person works these hours. That's your employer of record, to keep it in simple terms. That can be a parent or a guardian. It can be, again, it has to be an individual over 18. So like I mentioned, Ashlyn's 21. She's, and she is her own employer of record. So she signs all her, her PSW's time cards. Or it can be an agency, which is a third party. So there are lots of agencies out there, at least there's more and more coming, more and more of them starting, I should say. So there are agencies out there. They seem to have more and more cropping up, which is really helpful because there is a lot of people have a hard time finding PSWs or coordinating being the employer of record. So agencies can do that, and it's a little different because the individual is hired through the agency instead of through the state and the county. And the agency is the employer of record, and they sign the time cards, and they some agencies will actually send you, like, pair you up with a personal support worker if you're looking for them, so that can be really helpful if you don't have someone in mind that you want to be a personal support person for your child. So again, so one of those three things, people can be an employer of record. Brokerage services. So I get this question a lot because it sounds, it's like, what's this? It sounds totally different. So if you hear someone say like, oh, my child has brokerage services, or they're going into brokerage services, a brokerage service is a private organization that provides the same services essentially as the county, with a few exceptions. They only serve or provide services to people over 18. So it's really more focused on adults. So again, it could be, an adult that's highly independent and they're needing that job coaching support, or, helping out in community, things like that. Or, it could be that the person does need, some level of, in-home, foster care type situation, and the brokerage helps build that and, put it through. So examples here in the Portland area are UCP Connections, Community Pathways, Inclusion Inc., Independence Northwest, Mentor Oregon, and some of these are actually all over the state, but this is just a short list. And then Self-Determination Resources Inc., which is SDRI. So again, this is not something that you even need to think about if your child is not nearing 18. That's more, and again, services are the same. It's just one is for children and adults, and brokerage is really only for adults, and they do focus more on supporting with employment type services in addition to the personal support workers. Let's see, whoops. So that is County Developmental Disability Services and Kplan. And then so I'm going to pause there for 1 second and check in with Jenny, see if you have any questions before I jump to the next needs-based benefit.
Yeah, no questions at this time.
Okay, great. So government benefits there's a lot of things that sound very similar, so it can be very confusing. And so we're not going to get into every single one of these tonight, but we'll talk about a couple that I think are important. So when we say needs-based benefits are really based on need. So they're usually income and asset based. So you have to be under a certain income and under a certain asset amount in order to access needs-based benefits. Entitlement benefits are different. Entitlement benefits are benefits that someone can access because either someone else is paid into the Social Security system, or the individual themselves is paid into the Social Security system, or a spouse has something like that. So when we're looking at needs-based benefits, the most common one I would say that you might hear of is supplemental security income, or SSI. And if you look at the tops of this slide, you've got SSI, and then on the entitlement side, you have SSDI. So it sounds the same, but they're two different benefits. So on that needs-based side, we have SSI. We have Medicaid, which, here in Oregon is Oregon Health Plan, Washington, it's AppleCare. There's state waivers. So again, the Community First Choice waiver that came in with the ACA. And here in Oregon, that's Kplan. Like I mentioned, Washington is IFS. And then some other needs-based benefits that you may be familiar with are like SNAP, so the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or TANF, which is temporary assistance for needy families. So all of those things look at income and assets to say, like, does this person qualify based on, their level of, needing it financially, essentially. And then on the entitlement side, like I mentioned, there's Social Security disability insurance, which sounds like that would be what you'd apply for your kid if they have a disability diagnosis, but it's actually not. So SSI is for people who've never paid into the system. So that's the one that you would apply for a child who's never worked. Where SSDI is for someone who has paid into the Social Security system. So we'll get into the details of this here, right now, but SSDI is for, like, I could access SSDI if I became disabled for some reason, literally tomorrow. Our children can access it under the Children's Disability Benefit, or the DAC benefit, which is Disabled Adult Child Benefit, same thing. People, if you're, depending on your age, maybe you're pulling retirement Social Security benefits. If you've had a spouse pass away, maybe you have a survivor benefit. And then Medicare, which again, sounds like Medicaid, but it's not, it's Medicare. So we'll go into the details of just the two that I think are kind of, again, most important. So Supplemental Security Income, the SSI, that is that means tested. So the government determines eligibility based on the person's monthly accountable income and resources. To qualify for SSI, the individual applying for benefits has to meet the Social Security Administration's definition of disability and have limited income and assets. And so this is where it gets tricky, is that for minors, so anyone under 18, they actually do include parents' income and assets. So that's why a lot of people who have, kids under 18, if they don't understand the program, they might apply for SSI and they won't qualify based on the parent's income and assets. So, so it's parent or guardian income or assets. And then the purpose of SSI is to provide food, shelter, and basic necessities. And in 2021, that is the maximum benefit that an individual can get is $794 a month. And that's, subject to some different things, but again, SSI is that means tested or needs-based benefit that does include the income and assets. And if your child is under 18, they're going to look at your income and assets as the determination on the financial side. So Medicaid, again, previous to Kplan, a lot of kids weren't on Medicaid. There was waiting lists to get on Medicaid, things like that. So Kplan changed that a bit, where a lot of kids are on Medicaid now whose parents didn't qualify for SSI. So, but for some reason, let's just say your child's not on Medicaid and they apply for SSI and they are approved for SSI, then what comes with that is Medicaid. So again, needs-based program covers medically necessary equipment and hospitalization, and it covers those at-home services. So not going to spend a lot of time on that again, because we just talked about it a lot, but that's also tied to SSI. So what is the needs-based asset limit? Because I keep talking about that. And so the amount is that for a minor, again, it would be the parents or guardians' total assets. For a married couple, that amount is $3,000. For a single parent, that is $2,000. Where it changes is that when your child turns 18, regardless if they still live with you or not, the total asset limit applies of $2,000 to just your child, just the individual, and the guardian's assets are excluded. So this is where we see kids, essentially finally, I guess, qualify for SSI is on their 18th birthday, mom and dad's assets and income no longer count. And as long as everything's in the right buckets for that child on an asset basis at that point, then the child can qualify on the financial side if they, do have a disability diagnosis according to Social Security rules. So there are a few assets that don't count. So exempt assets, regardless if it's a parent or if it's the child, whoever's asset it is, if they're a minor and they're looking at parents' income and assets, and if it's a child over 18, your primary residence doesn't count, but that the person has to live in the home. So that doesn't mean that they can own a home but not live in it. It has to be their primary residence is what's excluded. One vehicle. So again, in a two-car family, of parents, one vehicle will be excluded, the other one will be counted, the value of it will be counted. Able account assets up to $100,000. So you can have $100,000 in an able account, or the individual can, and they exclude that value. 529 college savings accounts are also excluded, as well as assets inside of a properly drafted special needs trust. So those are all exempt assets. What's countable is really everything else: checking and savings, investments, savings bonds, trust assets other than properly drafted special needs trusts, UTMA and Coverdell, real estate that would be an additional property. So, primary residence is excluded, but if they have a rental property, or they have a vacation home or something like that, that second home is counted as a second vehicle. And any account or asset essentially that can be converted into cash. That's, again, not the ones I just listed to being exempt. So, these are mostly examples. The list is, there's probably other random one-offs that, but you can access the Social Security Administration website to give you the full complete list. So what's needs-based income limit? So for a minor, it would be their guardian's income. And how it works is that the income limit is factored, on the number of the household. So, it is this, there's all these factors, and we're not going to get into the weeds on that tonight, just but on a basic overview. Earned income is, the gross income is counted 50 cents on the dollar. So for every dollar earned in earned income, Social Security counts 50 cents of that amount. So they, to keep the math simple, if you made $2,000 in earned income, they would count 1,000 of that earned income. Unearned income, which is things like, child support is considered unearned income, unemployment is considered unearned income, just really exactly what it sounds like, something that's not earned from working, is counted dollar for dollar. So if you have $1,000 of unearned income, they're going to count it as $1,000. Where that changes is when that, the adult child becomes, 18, and that's where the guardian's income is no longer counted. So then again, it's just looking at the individual. So again, the national situation, she's 21. If she, works and earns money, they're going to count, for every dollar she earns, they're going to count 50 cents of that. And then unearned is dollar for dollar. And so, if approved, you definitely, if you have a child that's working or wanting to work, you want to look into things like the work incentive programs, which there's literally called the Work Incentive Network, and they're great at helping families like figure out and calculate out, how individuals can work and still receive some benefits, and find that balance of maintaining eligibility, but also someone having a full life and being employed. So how to apply for SSI. So you're going to gather personal and financial information about the person seeking benefits. One, ID is important. They have to have identification. You want to have a list of doctors. So all the doctors that your child has seen, or any doctor that has given, diagnosed them previously with, a diagnosis that falls under, the definition of disability. Gather financial information and asset information. So again, if your child's under 18, this is going to be a lot of your information. If they're over 18, then it's just strictly the child's financial and asset information. Schedule an appointment at your local Social Security office. That was, kind of pre-pandemic. Now you can do phone appointments, and they also have created a link on their website to be able to apply for disability online for SSI, which you didn't used to be able to do. You used to only be able to apply for SSDI online, but they've now created one for SSI. So that's really helpful. And then there's one specific to children. So the links will be sent to you guys so that you can, access these if you need them. So Essentially, you schedule the appointment, you share this information, and you apply, and they will, they'll ask you questions. They will maybe, again, like request records from your physician. If your child hasn't had an evaluation in, since they were 10 and they're now 18, depending on the diagnosis, they may make them, go see a psychologist and just, verify that yes, they're still disabled. I know it sounds silly, but I get a letter literally every single year that I have to sign and acknowledge that Ashlyn still has cerebral palsy, which, will never go away, but it's what we have to do. So they want to make sure that the child is, has some fresh medical records that continue to support the determination. We've only got a few minutes left. We can get into entitlement benefits. I can go through that quickly. Or Janine, is there questions that we should address really quickly? I guess it goes to 7:30. I take that back. I'm looking at the time wrong.
I don't see any questions. I just wanted to let people know that I've been putting links in the chat that you can copy, and then I will take those links and they will be in an email that you will get post webinar. Thanks.
Great. Okay, so entitlement benefits. So like I said, the acronyms sound very, very similar. We've just been talking about SSI for a few minutes, and now we're going to talk about SSDI, or what we call Social Security Disability Insurance. So this is not means tested. So it's not based on your income and assets. It's based on eligibility or work credits that either the individual themselves has paid into the system or a parent has paid into the system. So to qualify as an adult, you have to become disabled while working or by having a work history. So like I mentioned, if I became, disabled for some reason, then, and I've worked and have my 40 work credits in, then I could potentially draw my own SSDI benefit, my own Social Security Disability benefit. This is not a flat amount. It's calculated off the amount that you've paid into the Social Security system as an employed person. Or if someone has never worked before, then they can qualify under the Children's Disability Benefit. And the rules and requirements around that is that they have to have become disabled prior to age 22. So where this gets a little tricky is in situations where someone maybe has an accident at age 23 and they get a traumatic brain injury that, impacts them, fairly significantly. That person would not be able to draw potentially off of a parent's record. They would, again, they have to have received the disability diagnosis, or the disability has to have started before 22 to be able to draw off of a parent or guardian who's eligible based on their work record. And then if the parent is currently retired, disabled, or deceased. And so what triggers this benefit is different for every single, it's not age based on the child, it's based on what the parent is doing. So like Ashlyn will not be eligible to, if she never works, she will not be eligible to draw off of my Social Security record and draw SSDI until I start drawing my Social Security retirement benefit. So if as a parent, if you never pay into the Social Security system, which some people don't, depending on their profession, there are some professions that do not pay into Social Security, or self-employed folks maybe don't pay as much into Social Security as others do. Then there's not a benefit necessarily for your child. So it's, again, based on what you've paid in, or mom or dad, doesn't matter who. So again, I start drawing Social Security, then Ashlyn would be eligible to draw SSDI at that point. Or if I became disabled myself and went on SSDI, then she would draw then. Or if I passed away, then she would be able to draw off of my record. The other space in this is survivor benefits. So, you might have a minor child. If one of the parents passes away, then sometimes we see children getting SSDI benefits as a survivor of a parent at that point too. Jenna, you have a question?
Yeah, give me 1 second. I have to interpret it.
Sure.
What about the people with autism? So is in relation to SSI?
Yeah, so, people with autism do get SSI. Just again, it depends on how much their autism diagnosis affects their ability to work or affects their ability to complete activities of daily living. So I definitely work with families who have kids with an autism diagnosis that receive SSI. So it just depends on how impacted they are, kind of just like really with anything else. So, if they're able to be fully employed and work 40 hours a week, then they're not going to get SSI because they don't need it. They can work and quite frankly make more than $790 a month. So.
Okay, and then I don't know whether this is a question or a statement, but it says, if the person gets married, they are not eligible for the children's benefit.
That's actually true. So yeah, if they are married, then they will not get the children's benefit. So yes.
Okay, hang on, I have another one. So a person that experiences autism, can they get SSI?
Yes, again, based on the evaluation of Social Security to deem whether they're, I guess, disabled enough by their diagnosis.
Okay, great. Thank you.
So what comes with SSDI is Medicare. So before we were talking about the SSI and Medicaid, those needs-based benefits, Medicare comes with SSDI. So once the individual has been on SSDI for 24 months, they are then eligible for Medicare. And the reason I mention this is because, I won't be eligible from, well, probably later, but, most people that are, in their late 50s or 60s aren't going to be eligible for Medicare until they're 65. That's the current rule for Medicare. That doesn't apply to your child. If your child receives benefits, because based off your work record, and let's say they're 34, once they've been on benefits on SSDI for 2 years or 24 months, then they will get Medicare as well. So in a lot of those situations, we see kids with Medicare and Medicaid, which we call dual coverage on the insurance. So, and usually what we see is, Medicaid picks up what Medicare doesn't. They pick up copays, deductibles for the Medicare, and then, Medicaid tends to cover more services than Medicare anyway, but can still cause, create some dual eligibility. So yeah, in review, just to kind of give you a visual to make it simple, SSI goes with Medicaid, SSDI goes with Medicare. Two very different well, I should say 4 very different programs, but definitely 2 different things between the SSI and the SSDI, and different eligibilities for each. So again, back to kind of like, why would I apply for benefits? Or, the question of, my child's 13 or 14, like, I don't know if, maybe they're going to need benefits when they're 18, maybe they're not. Again, it's really about maintaining eligibility for benefits, not about locking our kids into being on benefits for the rest of their life if they don't need them. It's, let's plan for that. And then when they get to 18, if they do need that additional support of SSI, then we can apply and they can get that support, if needed. So again, I think it's just, when we're looking at the long-term planning piece, like I was mentioning, it's not just about focusing on the therapies and the speech and those kinds of things that we do when they're young. It's about, what kind of support are they going to need when they're a little bit older? And, are there any things we need to do now to kind of get things in the right places to have them be eligible at age 18. So it's understanding the role of public benefits, making some decisions about the future, thinking about those things, analyzing financial resources. So, thinking through like, oh, my mom has been saving $50 a month for every grandkid for the last, 15 years. Is that going to, be an issue? We want to get that cleaned up before we go to apply for SSI in a few years. And then the longer term planning piece is that, if your child is not going to be fully employed and able to financially 100% support themselves, then, most parents want to be able to leave a portion of their estate to their kids regardless, but, maybe something additional for the child with special needs to financially support them. So that's where that first, special needs trust considerations need to come in. And, you know, the one thing I'll say about special needs trusts is that just because you don't have a ton of assets or don't think you can fund one today, doesn't mean that you can't have the language drafted into your estate planning. So that's like a whole nother, you know, subject that we can, you know, talk for an hour and a half about. But again, just kind of thinking through, making sure you understand, you know, some of those, the proactive planning pieces around, you know, longer term support. And thinking through, you know, I think the benefits play a role in what's the vision. And I think Jenny can probably, you know, attest to this with Christian. It's like, okay, where do they want to live? And what kind of, how much independence does your child want as an adult? And, you know, are they going to have a job? And, you know, like thinking through those things and then backing into, okay, well, what kind of supports are they going to need to get there? And, you know, these programs, especially Kplan, and vocational rehabilitation, things like that, those are definitely programs that can help support the vision that you have or that your child has for themselves for the future. And, you know, thinking through that future lifestyle in a sense, no different than, you know, doing college planning for kids that you know, expect to go to college, things like that. So what's our role? So, you know, we do these workshops, we do lots of education. We also help families on a more specific level of answering specific questions about your situation, helping you understand, you know, what benefits you are on, making sure you're maximizing them. So really looking at a holistic plan of helping you figure out if you're not sure, if you've got all your ducks in a row to apply for some of these benefits, we can definitely answer those questions and answer questions about the financial piece of special needs trusts and, you know, different things that are, you know, part of that longer term, you know, planning piece and helping you strategize and, you know, use things like ABLE accounts to maybe qualify if you need to, stuff like that. So we can help make the right recommendations to get everything in the right buckets for you. I think that's it.
Question, Alisha.
Yep.
Is there assistance for co-pays if the parent doesn't qualify for SSI?
So if the child's on Kplan, then they'll get Medicaid through Kplan, and they will get and they will pay copays and deductibles. So I guess I'm not sure if the question is about copays and deductibles from private insurance or copays for like OHP copays.
Mary, would you be able to qualify that question? We had another question. I'm not sure, Yesenia, if you could translate it into English for me from Guadalupe. So the question was, I had a problem with the SSI. I sent the check stubs every month, and at the end of the year, they told me that they had made a mistake and I have a debt with them. How do I resolve this?
I would recommend, you know, if you were sending the pay stubs in timely, you know, when they send you that letter that says that we've overpaid you, there's usually a section in there that talks about how to file an appeal and to say like, look, I did everything I was supposed to do, you know, and see if they'll waive, you know, if they'll, you know, either correct it or waive it or whatever needs to be done. That'd be my first recommendation. You know, there are SSI attorneys that can help with those types of, you know, things as well. So if you're, you know, unsure, you know, if you did everything you were supposed to do, then I would consult with the Social Security attorney.
Right, thanks, Alisha. So Mary answered to clarify her question, which was, is there assistance for copays if the parent doesn't qualify for SSI? And she said, can they get copay assistance under Kplan, or is OHP assistance needs-based?
So If they are eligible for Kplan, they will get Medicaid, which in Oregon is OHP. That is completely separate from whether or not they qualify for SSI.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so if they're Kplan eligible, that means they're Medicaid eligible, which means they can be on Oregon Health Plan.
Perfect. Next question. Do you need to apply for SSI to set up a special needs trust?
No. Mm-mm. Because a lot of people will set up special needs trusts when their kids are young, you know, maybe they already know that their child's going to need significant support in the future. And then they don't apply for SSI until the child's 21. So anytime there's a possibility, you know, as soon as you're, you know, if your child's on needs-based benefits, which is at this point, if they're under 18, it's Kplan and OHP Medicaid health insurance. That's a needs-based benefit. So if you were to pass away and the child inherited more than $2,000, or grandma leaves them more than $2,000, or, you know, whoever, then they're over that asset limit for Kplan. And so, you know, a special needs trust can be drafted as like basically a bucket to catch any kind of inheritance or money in case someone was to pass away. And, you know, instead of naming your child directly in your will, you would have a special needs trust drafted in there. Because that is technically a needs-based benefit. And then once they move on to 18 and qualify for SSI, that's another needs-based benefit. So anytime a child's receiving needs-based benefits that you want them to continue to be eligible for, you want to have some protections, you know, make sure that your estate planning is done properly because I see it happen all the time where, especially in this last year, people pass away unexpectedly and assets or money is left behind. And then we're busy trying to clean it up and help them figure out where to put the money to give their kid that qualified for supports.
Okay, great. Next question. When an adult receives SSI, do they need to pay taxes?
No, it's not a taxable benefit.
Okay.
It's not like Social Security that you get when you're retired and it's, you know, there's a potential that you could have to pay that kind of, you know, Social Security tax on income tax, not for SSI.
Perfect. Okay, and then the people that asked questions said thank you. Anyone else have any more questions? Alisha, do you want to put up the slide of how they can connect with you? Do you still have that?
Yep, I sure do. So yeah, so we have a website and you can, anyone can just put their information in and it sends us a quick note. And that's abeonaplanning.com, ABEONA planning.com. My email address is Alisha Langford at financialguide.com, or my phone number is 503-928-4081. So easiest way is probably to go through the website and just click that, you know, fill out the little form. I think it's just a couple lines that, and let us know that you have some questions or want to chat with us or learn more about what we do.
Alisha, how would our families that are on here that are Spanish speakers connect with you?
That's a really good question. I think let's chat about that offline, Jenny.
Yep.
And create a plan. Mm-hmm.
So for tonight's purposes, please reach out to Yesenia and we will connect you with Alisha for those families that speak Spanish.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Any other questions last minute?
I put Alicia's information in the chat, and again, that will be in the email that we send out. Thanks, Alisha. A lot of information, and I know just from my experience when Christian turned 18, how overwhelming it was. And so if you go home tonight, or you are at home tonight, and you think about this, and you're like, oh my gosh, I needed to ask that question, just put it in an email to Alisha, and she'll be able to answer it.
Yep.
And then if you are just wanting to connect with another parent to talk about what does this all look like, I'm happy to chat with you at any time. And you can reach us at CODSN website, which is www.codsn.org. And my email is Jenny JENNY@CODSN.org. Alisha, thank you so much. Really appreciate you spending the last hour and 15 minutes with us.
Yep, absolutely.
Just a quick reminder for those of you that would like to help us out and go on and check out the survey and give us some feedback and be entered into a drawing for a $25 gift card. Oh, hang on just a second. We do have a question.
Okay.
So Rosa would like some clarification. And it's in Spanish, so I'm going to have Yessi translate it for me.
So I'm getting, it's in the Q&A questions. She wanted to know, for those who have autism, can the SSI be taken away?
I mean, yes, because they do, you know, what doesn't matter what the diagnosis, they evaluate or, you know, to make sure the person's continued to be as, you know, eligible every so many years. So especially when they turn 18, they'll check then, like they can do a reevaluation if they're on it before 18. And then, like I mentioned, like I get a thing I have to fill out almost every year or every couple of years. It feels like every year, but maybe I'm, you know, over exaggerating, but I do think it's every year, where I have to fill out a questionnaire that, you know, talks about, is she working? Is she earning money? What are her assets? Does she still have cerebral palsy? So if they become employed and they're working more than, you know, what is allowable of income for Social Security, then they could potentially, yeah, lose it. So it's not you qualify once and you're good forever. They have to be reevaluated every once in a while.
Yeah, so one of our program coordinators that's in Harney County, Jennifer Williams, said that SSDI reevaluates every few years as well.
Yep.
We also had a comment for Esperanza, and she said that she's going to be reaching out to you because she knows that her 7-year-old son will be receiving an inheritance and they're not sure what to do with it.
Yep. Yep. Oh, absolutely. Can definitely help you sort through that. So.
Okay, any other questions? Oh, new message. Okay, hang on, it's in Spanish, so let me. Yessi, are you able to translate that for me?
Yeah, sorry, my microphone wasn't working. Let me go into the English. Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, let me go back to the chat, sorry. So could you please explain how we can support children in our community?
Like more specifically, maybe in the community, meaning with services in community, or like programs like, you know, like where CODSN has a lot of families, you know, like activities in community. I guess I'm not 100% sure of the question specifically.
Alisha, while we're waiting for the answer to that,
Yeah.
There's a question, do you charge for planning services?
Yeah, it's a great question. So we don't charge for like an initial call, like the, you know, after a workshop to get more information, and we don't charge for the intake, you know, and then because from there we try to see like if it's the right fit for someone to work with us or not. So, you know, because we definitely, you know, we can't serve you know, help everybody, but we try to at least help get them where they need to be to get, you know, support. So, you know, we do charge for some services, but we don't charge for some of those, you know, initial questions being answered and getting you where you need to be.
Okay, and then I'm back to Maria's question. It was about community inclusion.
I mean, community inclusion, I think, really, and maybe Jenny, you can speak to this, but, it's connecting with community partners or family support networks that have, inclusion for children activities, so depending on where you live, I know I see great stuff coming from CODSN all the time. Here, depending on your child's diagnosis, if you're in the Portland area, places like Autism Society of Oregon, United Cerebral Palsy, there are, activities, inclusion activities that go on, and you want to just, be on their websites and mailing lists to see if, what's available for your area.
Yeah, so Maria, can you share with us where you're located? In Corvallis, so and Albany. Okay, so I'm going to connect with you guys, and I can connect you with the family networks that are in your area, and maybe they can help you with what's already available as far as developing inclusion. I think that's something that's very specific to each family, and for my son Christian, that looked like being included in basketball and soccer and all of those other activities that he was seeing his peers do, and Boy Scouts, all of those kinds of activities that we would just go alongside him and support him however he needed to be with children that didn't experience disability. So trying to make it a balanced outlook. So we can talk more about this. I'm happy to reach out and have a conversation. And Yesenia is always really good to do conversations through WhatsApp. She has lots of families that are Spanish speakers right now that are connecting and really trying to figure out what this can look like in their own community. So let's connect, Maria, and try and figure this out.
Yeah, great. Yeah, great point. We did a lot of that with Ashland too, just regular dance classes or ballet or whatever it was. Yep.
Yep, awesome. And really good questions. And I love that you're looking for those answers, because that's how, I always talk about the fact that once our children leave school, 18 or 21, that there is no special needs bus or special needs mall or special needs place, because it's just community. And so how do we make the community that we live in a welcoming community and a community that they can feel proud of and be a part of?
Yeah, and I think that's a great point, kind of back to the Kplan services and accessing those things. Like, yesterday, literally, Ashland made a plan to go with a friend to the beach, and they had a personal support worker drove them, and they had a whole wonderful, fabulous day just going to the beach with one of her friends from school, and had ice cream and did the things that they like to do. And that's where some of those supports can help them have that community inclusion, and just doing what, I would have liked to have gone to the beach yesterday, just saying.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
Yesenia is happy to help facilitate those connections with the local family networks. We are part of a consortium of all the family networks across the state. We've just been reinstated with funding through the legislator. And so we are really happy to connect you with your local family network, and they can help you with feeling more comfortable about being in community with your son or daughter. All right, well, I'm going to wrap up if we don't have any more questions. Let you all get to your families and your evening.
yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you again, Jenny, for having us tonight, and look forward to connecting with you guys again soon.
All right, thanks, Alisha. Appreciate it.
Have a good night.
You too.